What is going on, everyone? I fucked up this intro, but we're going to continue anyways. Welcome to the 5Marks Pro Wrestling Podcast. You think after 81 episodes I'd know how to do this intro, but I clearly just do not. Anyways, welcome again for another week of the 5Marks. I'm your host, Mr. Martin115, joined as always by my lovely dance partner. He's here every single week. Welcome you back, Mr. Carmo.
I tried to escape, but it didn't happen. It just didn't work. But yeah, I am Cameron. Welcome back for another week, ladies and gentlemen.
If you want any tips of how to actually leave, just ask the other lads.
Yeah, I kind of do actually. Where's Emmett? Where's my phone?
But this week we are joined. Now I've kind of prepared an intro here that I've got to get out on this side. I've come properly prepared for this. We are joined by Five Factory's favorite person, the silkiest person, I'm probably saying this all wrong, silkiest person in Irish professional wrestling history. The man who's just come off, in my opinion, the greatest rivalry of 2023 in Irish wrestling. This is Riordan O'Connor.
Greetings all. Hello. Hope you can hear me all good. I'm happy to be here. I don't like you two very much, but I decided, you know what, I would grace this podcast and this show with my presence, so here I am.
I mean,
we appreciate it. We do appreciate it.
We did pay the €200, so
it was $250 actually. That's a down payment.
It's on the way. It's on the way. It's on the way.
That's a down payment. That's if it falls through, and then I'll get you. We'll figure that out.
Carmel, that's all on you. But
I'll get that set now.
Thank you for coming anyways while Karen was sending that. We do appreciate it. We know obviously you were in this moment in time obviously healing from the absolute brutal match between you and Raven Creed. We'll obviously talk about that a little later on. But I guess we're going to kick things off the way we kick it off with everybody and just ask you, what is your first wrestling memory that comes to your mind that really just hooked you as a fan?
As a fan? It's a good question. So my brothers are much older than I am. When I was born, my brother, they would have been 17 and 13. So, and they were mad wrestling fans. And I was born in 2000. So I was born not at the height of the Attitude Era, I guess it was almost. But by the time I was a toddler crawling around, it would have been 02, 01, 02. And I was not allowed to watch, obviously, because I was a child. But I used to crawl into the room and just stare at the TV. And that was some of my earliest memories. It's funny. My earliest memory that I genuinely have myself is I thought it was Kane and Edge in a ladder match, but upon reflection, it's actually Edge and Matt Hardy, and it was the loser leaves Raw, and Lita was involved. For whatever reason, my memory was I was a huge Kane fan as a kid. I thought he was the coolest thing ever, and so my memory was warped because Kane was involved in that feud, yeah. And then so my brain twisted that. So many years later, I saw that clip of Edge and Matt Hardy on the ladder. I was like, oh, that's it. You know, when your brain, you see something for the first time in 20 years, you go, oh, that's the memory. So that would be my earliest memory. I also have memories of another funny one is my brother on a tiny TV was watching No Way Out 2001. And I had a memory of Jericho, Guerrero, and two other people that I couldn't remember, and a big red X. That was the stage, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I've made this up in my head. And then I saw the Fatal 4-Way with Guerrero, Jericho, Benoit, and X-Pac. And I was like, what the hell? This is a real memory. I thought I made this up in my head. But that was another funny one. So those would be my two most vivid memories as a kid.
I cannot
I want to go back to the... Sorry, man. I was just going to say, I want to go back to that ladder match that you were just talking about, because I actually watched that the other day at work. But my question is actually more so on Kane. So, being grown up a big Kane fan and everything like that, what was your reaction when he took off the mask?
So it's weird. So I loved Kane. But again, I was 3 years old when he unmasked. So, you know, Kane in 05 was like my real first introduction to watching it every week. And I remember as a kid, I was so frustrated because I'd watched WWE Experience. And by the time that I was avidly watching it every week, Kane was losing. He was, doing feuds to Rey Mysterio. He was losing to Cena. And so that drove me insane. But Kane was always like my guy for whatever reason. Whatever the entrance and the music was always, for whatever reason, just grabbed me. And whenever I had No Mercy on the N64 as a kid, my brothers gave that to me. Pick Kane every single time, even in the women's storyline. I picked Kane. I loved it. And then I remember another funny thing is that in 2010, historically, I love history. I'm a big history guy. I think studying history is really interesting. And in 2010 in WWE, people have gone back over years and been like, that was a really rough period because they lost a lot of their top guys. Jericho kind of went away for a while. Hardy was gone. Michaels retired. Batista went to do stuff. Taker went from full-time to, a bunch of other things. So 2010 was kind of a downtime. And that's when I started kind of getting a small bit jaded. I was like, I don't, And then Kane put back on the mask. And I was back in it again. I was complete. And then I never stopped watching. Like I stopped watching for like a month, maybe 2 months. Didn't care what they were doing. Came back on the mask. I was like, I'm back. And then that was it. That was the end of it.
Can I ask you, what is it about Kane that really just drove you? It's like he's the guy.
I remember I would have the computer. I would get the laptop, my parents' laptop, and I would watch these old clips of. There's so many of them, of just Kane coming in when there's a big brawl. And he just clears the ring. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. Him returning in 2000s. Paul Bearer comes out and with the red jacket. I thought that's the coolest thing ever. They did it so many times. Honestly, it's funny how every single time they did it, it still got a pop. Because you think people would get over it.
Yeah.
But it was always cool. It was always cool. Even like 05 when they were like, Kane, when the crowd knew that he wasn't probably going to win the world title. He wasn't in the world title picture, but they were like, oh, Kane's back. He's in this battle royal. You're like, oh shit, he's going to win. It's Kane. Like, so I don't know what it was. I also just, I just loved the mask. I'm not like a horror film guy. I've never, but something about the mask was always really, really cool. He just stood out from everyone else. And yeah, I remember as a kid, like going back and watching all those Kane and Taker matches, watching the Kane and X-Pac storyline, Kane finally inverting the colors when he was tagging with X-Pac, which is class. And then eventually the feud with X-Pac and everything. So yeah, just Kane was always, and then also finding out as a kid, obviously he didn't win the Royal Rumble 2001, which is like probably Kane's best match. Weirdly enough, I know it's weird to say a Royal Rumble is someone's best match, but it's one of his most amazing performances by anyone. And just being like, my guy made it to the last two or whatever and barely lost. And I was like, I don't know.
I'm going to quiz you. How many eliminations did he have?
He had 11.
He's got his wrestling history down.
Yeah.
He knows the knowledge. I
don't know if I ever told you this, Carmel, but I actually used to be like extremely terrified of Kane. Like legit terrified of Kane. I remember I was going to a house show in 05 and like we're in the hotel, me and my dad, and I was begging him not to go because I was scared of Kane's, not Kane, like Kane himself, but mostly his pyro. And I was like, what if these flames go up and I just catch fire and all this shit? My dad's like, shut the fuck up. So,
how old have you been at that house show?
I would have been 7 or 8.
Yeah.
So I was absolutely terrified. And of course, like get to the house show, Big Show King come out, no pyro, and I'm like, thank God, but there's still a big red machine inside that ring.
Yeah. I can give you one from the year before. I was at a house show in 04. Kane was going up against Benoit for the world title at that time. And it was about 6 months to a year just after he took off his mask. And I remember Kane coming out. It wasn't so much the pyro. I bawled my eyes out. I was so afraid of Kane. So afraid. I had to leave at Everton before the match ended. I was that afraid.
I feel like
awesome.
I feel like if like the three of us would go up, like we're gonna be the one person that goes up, who's just there like.
Yeah, like it's weird, right? I never was afraid of Kane. like ever in a weird way. In a weird way, him being as scary as he was like really interesting to me as a kid. I was like, this guy's scary. I like that. So
He's different. He's interesting.
mm,
So
yeah.
I like that.
I'll let you throw one, Carmel.
I was going to say, is there anyone else then that you kind of like, I suppose, really latched onto as you were growing up watching wrestling?
So Kane was like my guy as a kid, and I still love like a lot. Like even watching OK matches, I'm like, that's class. Funnily enough, Jericho was the other person. Which the reason I say it's funnily is because he is my favorite wrestler of all time, but also like Jericho was mostly a heel most of his run,
Yeah.
and a proper heel, not like a cool heel like Kane, like Ace Jericho. I was 8 years old watching that every single week, him coming out in the suit, talking quietly, and I just could not get over the fact that he was so awful. He was the worst person ever. And yet I didn't want him to lose. I didn't want him to lose, and I to this day I can't describe why. I obviously love long hair Jericho, as you can probably fucking imagine. And I thought when he started growing out again, when he went over to Japan and did the match with Omega, I was like, he's back. But yeah, Jericho was the other one. They were my two as a kid, for sure. Obviously, the other obvious ones are like Jeff Hardy. I was 8 years old, 9 years old when he was having matches for the world title against Edge. It was, no brainer. And trying to think who else I really, really liked. See, I was a weird kid. I never liked the main guys. I never liked Cena until now. I hated Cena as a kid. I didn't like Rey Mysterio. I didn't like Batista. I liked Undertaker because he was Kane's brother. All that stuff is really funny. So I always liked the kind of the side secondary characters. If that makes sense.
You're kind of like rooting for the underdogs.
Kind of, but also I wouldn't root for the underdogs unless I actually thought they were cool. So I don't know. I don't know what that makes me. I don't know. But yeah.
The one common thing though is like when it comes to just the long hair people, Riordan's just like, yeah, that's my guy.
That's my guy. That's my guy. And I forgave, Kane for shaving his head. It's okay. It's okay. Jericho cutting his hair. He grew it back, so that's okay too.
And Jeff,
I can't forgive. Jeff never lost it. I can't forgive Shawn Michaels. I mean, there's nothing you could do about that. I mean,
that was just terrible.
Yeah,
though.
that's happened.
It's genetics.
Now,
yeah.
Which one are we talking about now? Are we talking about like when he cut his hair down to here, or just completely off?
This length is fine. That's fine. That's good, Shawn Mike. Yeah, of course. People actually joke that I should have got shit brown tights when I cut my hair this long because my hair used to be really long. I cut it back to this because I hated when I was just walking around with like a cap on. Like it would really it would tickle. It's not nice. Yeah, so and it's amazing to me that Shawn Michaels kept his hair for so long because like 95 Royal Rumble, like he's already starting to thin up here, but somehow he held on to it for as long as he did. Shawn Michaels is also the man.
There goes the question: are you Shawn or Brett? So
I don't know. I go back and forth. As a kid, I was definitely Shawn Michaels because by the time I was born, I mean Bret Hart was retired. But I remember it was in the last few years. Even when I started training, like I've been wrestling for 5 years now, since September. So 5 years and a small bit. And even then, like I wasn't a guy who went back and watched Bret Hart matches. But it's in the last 3 years that I've been like Bret was class. Obviously, everyone knows that. So, the whole Bret or Shawn thing. It's yeah, I love them both. I don't have to pick one. They're not the same person. They're actually two different wrestlers. I can like both. I've never been one or the other. It never happened.
Do you know how many people you've just pissed off right now?
I know. Wow. Look at me with a gray area pick. That's me.
But there's one thing I want to talk about. I want to bring up here because you spoke about you really like history and stuff like that. How is your wrestling history? How good would you say that is?
So, my wrestling history is very, very obscure in the sense of if you ask me a question from when 97, I think Attitude Era started the Attitude Era. I got a lot of it up to about 03. I could say, if you ask me anything about Raw, I could probably tell you anything about Raw.
Mm.
But then when SmackDown splits, I get a bit,
Hazy.
I don't know. Yeah, I get hazy. I know the SmackDown 6 and, Lesnar and the Big Show and all that in SmackDown. And then after that, it goes pretty weird. I know I'm very good at history when it comes to like specific guys. I can tell you where Kane was on a certain week, but I cannot tell you who was champion at the time or anything like that. I can tell you what Jericho was doing. I could probably tell you what Shawn Michaels was doing, and RVD. RVD was the other one. Yeah.
Another
So
long hair guy.
another long haired guy. He was weird though because he had a tied up the whole time.
He still does now. Like, how the hell he's managed to
still
keep his
does.
hair?
I know. RVD's different kettle of fish. He's awesome.
I'll let you throw one, Carbo.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, and it's kind of something that we never really ask, and it's kind of a tough question, especially for a wrestling fan. Have you like a favorite match ever?
Yeah, I do.
Ooh.
It was funny because actually just the other day, a video popped up saying it was ranking the best WrestleMania matches of the last 20 years, but not like best ever. It's like every single show. So like 19, what was the best match? 20, and I watched the video, but I instantly first match I disagree with because your man was said at WrestleMania 19 that Brock and Angle is the best match on that show, and I disagree. I think that Jericho and Michaels is the best WrestleMania match ever. I very, very slightly prefer it to both the Taker Michaels matches and Angle Michaels at 21. I just think it's perfect, and that in some ways that might sound boring because sometimes perfect is boring. But Jericho Michaels I think is so great. I thought the story going into it, I still quote the whole like I wanted to be the next Shawn Michaels, but then I wanted to be the first Chris Jericho. I thought that's a great story. I think the roll up, it's one of the few times ever I think a roll up is brilliant. Like it's just brilliant.
Yeah.
And it leads to the spot at the end where it kicks him in the gulags. Like I think all that is just great. And again with the historian thing in mind, like that was Michael's first WrestleMania back from when he got hurt. So to have him not be in the main event and actually do this really personal blood feud instead is kind of a bold choice, right? But I think they really pulled it off, and I think it was really great. And that is my first personal favorite match. It's one of the matches I throw on if it's like a comfort match. If I'm ever bummed out, just throw on that match and I just feel better. So
I mean, like
I will say about that match as well. I think it's a match that like Shawn and Jericho needed at the time. I think Jericho was kind of like just off the world title run, kind of like plateaued a little bit. Michaels was obviously just after coming back, and then bang, meet a Mania, and it exploded. It was fantastic.
But even the four matches you named there are all different. Like Jericho Michaels, I feel like it's very technician wrestling. Then Kurt and Shawn is like straight up just shoot wrestling. Let's see who can fucking go the longest and the farthest. And then Taker and Michaels is just complete story driven.
Yeah. I think that Kurt Angle and Michaels, they have the high spot with the table and stuff, and they go to the outside. Jericho Michaels is pretty much all in the ring, which is another reason why I like it so much. There's no dive, there's no high spot. They don't do anything unreasonable, and they just do it flawlessly. I mean, the most amazing thing they do in the matches, Michaels, is like a moonsault off the top. Jericho catches them, like and obviously just Jericho does this triangle drop kick on the apron, and they go to the outside for a tiny bit, but like it's all very in the ring, and I just think, it's a match that I think a lot of people could have, but I don't think anyone could do it as well as they did it. Yeah.
Now, obviously, that being your number one match, I'm going to put you rightly on the spot. What would be 2 and 3 without including the three other ones you've already said?
2 and 3. So I remember. So I'm not really into what New Japan are doing right now. Not that I'm saying that it's bad, but I've just kind of fallen out of what they're doing. But I would say that the Omega Okada feud is what got me into New Japan. And I remember someone put the whole match on YouTube, the first match on YouTube. early January, and I remember I knew who Okada was. I didn't really know who Omega was, and I heard people talk about it, so I just watched it. I literally put it down, watched it, and was just like, "This is crazy." I was like, "What is this?" And then so from then on, I followed it, and I followed it all until I woke up one morning. I went down to the shop. I got a chicken roll. I got my Pepsi, and I sat down and I watched Omega and Okada 4 at Dominion. I believe it's 2019, I want to say.
2019,
The
I
one,
think.
yes, the one where Omega finally beats Okada. Well, he beat him in the G1.
Yeah, that might have
But the
been
fourth,
early 2019, I think. Late
I think
2018.
it's 29, because I think 2018 is the draw.
Yes, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think 29, yeah, because 18 January 4th was the Wrestle Kingdom, and then they went, or maybe it is 2018,
I
and
think it's
the
2018 because then he
Tokyo Dome
leaves.
was in 2017.
Yeah, he took a break then, and then AEW was formed midway towards in 2019.
I think it is 2018. I think the January 4th match actually happened in 2017. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure.
yeah, because
I
then
think,
in
yeah,
2019 then is AEW, and like Kenny was gone from New Japan. I think
yeah,
after Wrestle Kingdom with Jericho.
yeah. So basically, Omega and Okada 4. Um, I just think that for someone who watched that whole feud, not the whole feud, but I watched from the G1 onwards. So the match with Okada happens at Wrestle Kingdom, like that's class. I find out from Dominion, I didn't even know what happened, that they went to a time limit draw, and I didn't know those happened anymore. So then from then on, I was like, well, I don't know much about New Japan, but I'm just going to watch the G1. I don't know many of the people involved. I was going to watch the G1, um, and it was great. And then I just stayed a fan all the way until they finally had the match at Dominion. And from someone seeing that whole story play out, it was really, really um, satisfying. I think a lot of the way people talk about something like Michaels and Taker, you had to be there. Being there is half of it. And so to be there in the moment and go watch all of it happen was really, really great. Um, and yeah, Omega finally beating him was like I think one of the most satisfying things I've ever seen in wrestling for me personally, because I was so invested. Um, so yeah,
And what would be match number 3 then?
I don't know. I have no idea. God, I'm trying to think like um Jericho Michaels at No Mercy 2008 comes to mind.
Good match.
Very good match. Jericho Benoit, their ladder match at Royal Rumble 2001. The Royal Rumble 2001, just that match.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so I don't know if I could put it down to one, but that would certainly be yeah, it'd certainly be a few of them anyway.
So obviously you watched like growing up throughout the years. At what point did you kind of think to yourself, I want to give this a go. I want to try this.
I was 15. Tiny thing about my birth year is that it's just the year. So I was 15, so it's 2015. And I remember I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was about that year, but I played rugby as a kid, and I was a winger, as you can imagine. I wasn't technical enough with my hands to be a scrum half, although I was sometimes slotted into that role. And I remember, and I enjoyed it until it got to the age where it started getting very competitive. And it was to the point where it was so competitive, and you're dealing with teenage lads as well. So if you mess up, they don't want to talk to you. And
It's like an American
that
high
was
school.
very, yeah. So I stopped playing rugby because I was like, Dad, I'm sick of it. I hate everyone on my team. They're all dickheads. And he was like, fine. And I gave it up when I was about 13 or 14. So at that point, I didn't really have any sports outlet anymore. And I was like, I want to get into wrestling. And I was looking up all this stuff about CCW. And I was looking at all that, and I saw posters, but I never reached out. I never went to do anything because I was just scared. Not in like a scared to get hurt way, but just intimidated to actually go about
Yeah.
doing it. I'd say if I had a friend in school who liked wrestling, who wanted to do it, I probably would have done it as well because it would have been way less scary to go in with someone you know. Um, so I was about 15 when I started telling people in school that I was going to do it, and I remember everyone laughing because they were like, "That's hilarious. You're not." And I was laughing, but I laughed as well. I wasn't, but for whatever reason, it never made me like annoyed. I laughed as well. I was like, "Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah." And then I remember I was like, you know what? I'm already bad enough at school as it is. So I'm going to finish my leaving cert and then I'm going to do it. So I did my leaving cert. I got the results. I applied for college, and the week I started college is the same week I started college on Monday, and I did my first training in Phoenix at the time on Tuesday in 2018. It was September.
Ooh, so you rightly went, like, no pun intended, all in. Like, was
Yeah,
it,
that was a big week. That was a really, really big week. I mean, I walked into a big college where I didn't know anyone, and then the next day I walked into a small gym where I knew nobody as well. And I'm glad I waited in retrospect, not just because of the everything with TCW that we've heard over the years, but also just because I was a bit older. I feel like if I was 15 starting, I might have given it up,
yeah,
just because you're younger and but I was a small bit more mature to like push through it and
yeah.
stuff. So yeah, so that's kind of where that happened.
What
Caramel.
was it like on that first day when you kind of walked into the gym and you see that ring in front of you? And it's like you've been watching this on TV for so many years and now you're there doing it.
Yeah, it was pretty surreal. It's funny you were telling stories about the house shows and stuff. I'd never seen a ring in my life until I walked into that gym. I'd never gone to a house show. I'd never been to any live show ever. Um, I didn't have any friends who liked wrestling. My parents aren't into wrestling. I had nobody to go with. So the first time I saw a wrestling ring was when I walked into the Phoenix gym, and I remember Billy Bedlam was the first person I saw at the door. No, that's a lie. I don't know if you know Flint. You might have heard
No.
stories about Flint.
Good
Flint
stories.
is a fella who trained with us. Really good guy. He was standing outside the gym because it was kind of tucked away in the corner. So he was the first person I saw, and I was going there expecting to see a bunch of like yoked wrestlers, because I was like, oh, they're all going to be 6'5", and I'm going to be the tiny guy here. And then Flint is, my size, and he was just like, it's just up there, bud. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm in a cool place. Um, so in yeah, I don't think I've told him that before, but seeing him in a way was actually like really like
Oh, thank God, I'm not
these are
gonna be.
real.
I'm not gonna be a small guy. Just gets like, right, you're going over there.
Not even it wasn't even that. It was more like these are real people. I
Yeah,
don't have to walk into a place where because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I was going to walk into a place with a bunch of guys who are like 6'2", 250 pounds, been doing it for years. Like, no, I was walking into a place where a lot of people were inexperienced, and I felt very, very, very at home. So yeah, that was my first experience.
so we asked this to everybody. Now, some people remember, some people kind of remember other things. Do you remember your first bump and how you reacted to it?
Yeah, so I remember it was Marion Armstrong, it was Luke, took that class on that Tuesday, and he was sitting in the corner, and we were all online, and he was just like, "Okay, come and take a bump." And all the guys who had done some experience, they just came in bumped, and I was like, "I've never taken a bump before," and he was like, "Oh, go for it." So I did it, and I think I was so nervous and also so determined to not look like an idiot that I didn't really feel that much until I stopped. So I did a bump, and he was like, "That was good. Do you want to do it again?" So I did it again, and then I did it again, and then I did it again, and I was like, "Oh, that was fine. I felt grand." And then I got out to get water or something, and I was just like, "Oh." Um, I creased my neck on one of them, maybe two of them. So yeah. So I remember, and I remember that was like Luke was really cool because he was like, "Well, you're not afraid of it." So I remember that was like, because I wasn't. I actually really, really I wanted to do it.
Yeah,
So that was a very motivating thing that someone noticed that I was like actually, you know, uh, going for it, if that makes
yeah.
sense. So
It was like a like a small goal to keep you kind of going. It was like a small bit of like a boost, motivation. Like,
Yeah.
I can see you're doing this. Like you're not bad. You're not afraid. Oh my god, I didn't notice that. Like, that makes it.
Yeah.
Let's go again. Screw it. Let's go off the top rope this time.
No, I wasn't doing anything off the top rope. Fuck that. But yeah. So I was again, and also the context of like I started college the day before. I was like, I wasn't really afraid of like anything that could happen. I was like, fuck it. This is all a new experience. I'm just gonna do exactly what I'm told and try what I can. And if I was scared, I was just gonna say it. But I was just like, I'm just gonna go for it. And it was really, it was a pretty cool experience.
Now,
So
just for yourself, just for like someone's listening, because you literally like changed everything in a week. You started college and you started restaurant, and that obviously could be like terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Do you know? Do you feel like that was honest to God, like, yeah, that I needed that, and I'm ready to just go now? You know, from this moment on, heads in the game with fucking wrestling, heads in the game with studying. You know,
yeah, it was a weird one because
it'd be
like
terrifying for anybody.
yeah, like I mean I did the leaving cert and I had that summer and I was like that whole summer I was trying to start wrestling, but I was unaware that CCW had closed and that Phoenix was in the middle. So I was like, that was my deal. I was like, I'll do the leaving cert, and then the second I'm done, I'm going to start wrestling training. And I spent 2 months being like, what the hell? Where is this? I can't figure. Where is everyone that this wrestling I've heard about for years? I can't find it. And then finally, I just went on Facebook one day and typed it into the search bar and found it, and then that's how I showed up. But yeah, because everything happened so quickly was kind of half the reason why I wasn't as scared. Because I feel like if I had started college one week and then the next month I started wrestling training, I might have been worse off.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact that I was like, just throw everything at me and see how much I can catch at once. And whatever I don't catch, I'll try to pick up. And
yeah,
so that's kind of how that happened.
Do you want to go, Carmel?
I was going to say, what was the toughest part about training?
That particular class, or the first few months?
In general, the first few months, really.
First few months. The most difficult thing was, so when we did the beginner's course, so there was a beginner's course, and because obviously wrestling is a niche thing, we love it, but it is a niche thing. There weren't that many people at the training. So if you have a football team and you have 20 people and each person has to do, you come up in a line and you do it, you probably do it once or twice. If there's 4 people in a class, you end up doing that one thing about 5 or 6 times because it's such a small class. So, which in retrospect was a great thing, because you just get drilled with all this knowledge very, very quickly. You don't even notice it. But I remember, the toughest thing was like, I'm sore. I am very sore because I was training twice a week for the longest time, and then eventually they were like, you can come to the advanced class on the Thursday. So I did Tuesday night and I did Saturday morning, and then that eventually became Tuesday night, Thursday night, and Saturday morning. And there were a lot of times where I didn't want to go because I was very sore. But I did, and especially with the advanced class as well, because I picked up on things quite quickly. So they were like, if you want to come to the advanced class, do. And I remember, that's where Raven Creed was. That's where, Matt Schuyler was, Mr. Charlie, Dino, like, everyone you see on these shows, they were all there. But so it was more intimidating being with them, because they obviously, and also they, the way they talk. I mean, they would talk about these memories from CCW and all this. There's clearly years of friendship there, and I'm just a new kid, and I'm like, in some ways it was literally I was joining a school, but it felt like going to a new school where I was like, hey, can I join the group? Is this cool?
Can I be part of the cool kids?
Yeah. So that was intimidating as well. But we got through it. It was all right.
So, how long then from when you started did it take to actually get to your first match?
So my first match was, funnily enough, it was in Limerick. Which is weird because, wrestling Cork is actually in Limerick. Um, they did a show in Limerick on Paddy's Day. It was 2019 on Paddy's Day in Dolan's with Phoenix. And they were bringing in Gary Balance, Bingo Balance. And they, all week, I remember them talking about what they were going to do, and they were going to do something, and they didn't know what to do, how to bring him in. And so eventually they were like, okay, we want to give him a small match, and we need a trainee that we can trust to do it, that doesn't have any sort of, nobody would know who he is.
Yeah.
Like, so Mr. Charlie, for example, before he was Mr. Charlie, that would have been obvious because he was the sidekick.
Yeah.
People would, some people know. They wanted someone that nobody would recognize at all, with generic yellow boots and red fire tights, who literally nobody would know, and just do a showcase for Bingo. And I remember I was told on the day, and I was stressed off my nook. I was so nervous. Because again, it was a thing where I wasn't told. I was
Yeah.
told on the day. And the whole time I was like, well, I trained for this. It's fine. I was trained for this. And also, like, I done training matches and training shows, gym shows. But that was the first thing in front of a real crowd that a crowd that paid to be there, and who were having drinks, so they were going to say whatever they wanted. So that was a real test. They gave us 5 minutes. We went 2, because I didn't do anything, which I beat myself up on for like a year or 2 after that happened. In retrospect, I was like, why didn't I do more? And in retrospect, I'm like, actually, that was perfect. I was like, well, it's fine. But I remember that was pretty intimidating. I didn't even get an entrance. I walked through the crowd and just got in the ring and just did that.
You got an entrance, but you got the jobber entrance. Like, hey, yeah, look,
Yeah,
no
and I was
music,
introduced.
just yeah.
I was introduced as the local talent, which I am not. So, and all the lads would be like, "What part of Limerick are you from?" And I was like, down the road." So that's pretty funny. So that was a pretty funny story, yeah.
I feel like there's another lad going around at the moment saying he's from Limerick, and he's not.
Oh, we did done. Keep going. Forget about him.
Each to their own.
Did you find that after that match? I know you said there about you were kind of like looking back on it for nearly a year after that match. Did you find after that match that it was a relief that it was kind of like, okay, I've got my first match done, or was it still just that thought of the match?
There was a huge amount of relief. Oh yeah, like all the nitpicking and shit that came way later. I was like, oh, thank God that's fucking over. Do you know what I mean? But with the relief, there also came the I can do better, and I knew I could do better the second it happened. But I was so that kept me going again, and it was another. God, it would have been another 6 months before I did another proper show. So that was like a real small, just to feel that out. It would have been another 6 months before I had another match, and that match was as a mad story as well. If you want to hear it, I mean that story is pretty funny.
I mean, go ahead.
Was it against Justy and Phil Boyd?
Yeah. So I'll give you the inside scoop. So I had tights. They're over there, actually. Fire tights. They didn't fit me. The waist was too big. I have a very small waist. I'm jacked, obviously, but I have a very small waist. So when I got those tights, I was like, they were just, falling off me. So they wanted me to wrestle Justy and Phil, who are obviously class. And I was like, grand. But I didn't have gear that fit me. And the gear that I had paid for, the purple gear, was on the way. It was still on the way. It was still being made. So I asked a certain blue-haired woman, could I borrow her leather pants? And I did. But what had happened was, so September 2019, a certain virus kind of is starting to pick up traction. And I wake up that morning and I can't eat. I barely breathe. I'm spewing just out my guts. I was in a horrible state. I was so sick. And my mom was like, you can't go to this fucking show. Like, you can't. You absolutely can't go to the show. I was like, I have to. So I went out, and because I was so sick, eventually those pants go back to its owner. They get sick. Everyone else gets sick. And
Oh.
everyone to this day is convinced that I might have had coronavirus, but I don't know. I don't think so. But they are convinced that that's what happened. So that's a pretty funny story. That match was, just Phil had me in the corner. He just put his boot against my neck, and I was there fucking trying to get it off. And then fucking Justy is just singing. He just puts his foot in the bottom rope and just starts singing to the crowd. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? I was like, what am I? And I was there like, I literally, as I'm lying there, I'm like, what the fuck? And I remember you have these moments where you realize that you have it,
Yeah.
right? So I remember I was on the top rope and they were arguing about who's going to superplex me. And they were arguing, and I stood up ready to do a missile drop kick. And I'm like, will I go now? Will I go now? And I was there like, will I go now? And I was like, will I go now? And I was so like, will I go now? And then out of nowhere, I just went, hey, dickheads! And then they both turned around, and I remember in that moment, and it was the worst bump ever. Oh my God, it came down so badly. But I remember the reaction that it got. Yeah, I still remember a move, so I don't know what that says. I don't know, that kind of stands out to me.
Can I ask you as well?
Oh.
Does that ever get brought up by anyone as like, I remember that time that Riordan got us all sick?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah. I never borrowed anyone's pants again for gear after that point. I was not allowed. But yeah, it's mad.
Go on, Carmo.
I was actually going to ask it in. Speaking of coronavirus, I will go into that. So obviously COVID came around. No training, no shows, no wrestling, no nothing. How did that kind of impact you?
Oh, majorly. Absolutely majorly, because so Phoenix did a show in our new training facility. It was behind there was like 30 people in the audience. We just filmed it. I did the main event with Matt Schuyler and Raven Creed. And then that was it. So that was like 6 months. That was like October, November. So 6 months after COVID initially hit. And I remember in that moment, there was like, oh, we're back. We're back. COVID's over. In my head, because I was very naive. COVID's over. We're back. And then January hits and boom, it's down again.
Yeah.
Everyone's, gone again. And I remember that was really frustrating. Obviously, I can't complain too much because I didn't get sick or anything, or nobody close to me, whatever. It was just very, sitting at home, frustrating. Yeah. And I remember I broke the rules a tiny bit, but I remember two good buddies of mine. I'd go up to their house. I'd walk an hour. So what happened was I was annoyed about how I looked at that show. I was like, I don't look muscular enough. I want to get more muscular. So I said, my two buddies who are in very good shape, I was like, I want to train with you over COVID because I'm not doing anything. I'm sitting here all day. I'm sick of the video games that I'm playing. I'm sick of the books I'm reading. I've done it all. I've been here for 6 months. So I walked an hour every day to their house, which was definitely outside the 5 kilometers, but it was only a tiny bit. I walked all the way there. We trained for 4 hours. We trained like crazy. I'd eat a shit ton of food. I'd either order something or their mom would make me something, which is really cool. And then I'd walk an hour back. And I did that for 5 days every week for about 4 months. And I remember when we finally got back to training and we were in Limerick and I was going to lock up with Owen Richards and he gave me like a look. Yeah, that's exactly what he said. He was like, look at him. Like, what were you doing? And that, again, is like something he probably doesn't remember. He probably doesn't remember saying that. But I remember, because I remember at the time, I was like, oh, shit, someone noticed. It actually is paying off. Um, and then because of that, COVID also gave me the push to travel, to go to other schools, to get comfortable with people that I don't know and train with everyone that I could. Um, so COVID was huge. I don't think if COVID didn't happen, I don't know how things would have panned out. It would be very different.
And you talk about like obviously pushing to go to other schools. Obviously, then at some point you start going to Fight Factory. What was like going up to Fight Factory and training up there?
Yeah, so Five Factory was great. I remember, to be truthful, I don't remember my first training session. But I remember, yeah, so we get the bus up. It was 3 hours up and 3 hours back in the one day, and we would do really, really good stuff. I think Phil took the first class that I was at. LJ took a lot of them, and it was great. I remember within 3 months, within 3 months, I don't know why this is an advertisement for Fight Factory. I was already okay. I thought I was pretty good at what I was doing. But I started in Fight Factory in September. I wrestled Justy in the main event in Cork in December.
Ooh.
It was 3 months. And in that time I did the main event in Limerick with Steve, LJ, and Justy. And from that performance alone, I got the match with Justy. So, and that was all because of what I was doing in Fight Factory. And not, I mean, I didn't use a headlock takeover they showed me. It wasn't that, but it was just training consistently with extremely talented people and working as hard as I was that afforded me that opportunity. So yeah, Fight Factory is the bomb. And what they're doing now is great. I think everyone up there is working super, super hard. And I haven't been up there myself in a small while because there are certain, I have to take care of things down here and get, but I want to try to get back there soon and try to be a mainstay up there again. Got to learn how to fucking drive because holy shit, that would really help. But once I get that done, like, yeah, I intend to be up there much more. So yeah.
But you like, the fans got to see you a lot. Like you had a match with Big Rab, on one show. You in one promo called yourself, as I said in the very beginning, Fight Factory's favorite wrestler. So like it seemed like things were going well, and then obviously, Hard Knocks. I think a few months later on would have started up at that point. If my timeline correct, Carmel?
Yeah, you're kind of in around the ball game.
So what was that kind of transition like for you from Phoenix to Hard Knocks?
Well, there wasn't as much of a transition because I was everywhere at once.
Yeah.
What kind of happened, there was no transition as it was so in November 2022 I just went through a mood, just a mood. I kind of lost a lot of my motivation and I wasn't up training at Fight Factory and I wasn't on some of those shows and it wasn't like a oh I'm pissed. It was just more like, oh, I wasn't training and I just kind of lost like that push, right? And so Christmas came, December came, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm just going to take the Christmas. I'm just going to have Christmas, enjoy Christmas. Going to try to put on as much weight as I can in that time and try to bulk up. And January comes and I blow up my knee. It's the first thing I do. So that's kind of how that happened. The reason that happened in retrospect is I probably was training too much. I was doing legs. I was doing it twice a week in the gym for about 6 weeks, which is not unsafe, but it just even that day in retrospect, I felt a bit shaky. And I went for a leap and I landed wrong. My fucking leg fucking twisted wrong. And then the recovery for that was a lot longer because I didn't take it as seriously as I should have. Because I was just fucking stupid. I was like, oh, because I went over to Australia in February. So I hurt my knee in January. I went to Australia in February. It was a family thing. So I was gone for a long time. I was like, oh, that's a month. That's a month off from wrestling and not doing anything. my knee will heal in time. I got back. It's still whacked. April's still gone. And at that point, I was like, okay, I actually need to get this checked. I was in denial about it for a very long time, which in retrospect, I mean, maybe it doesn't really matter. Like I had like a 6 month recovery time in the end. It's kind of, you know, um, like, yeah, I attacked Raven Creed in April, which your video reminded me of because I couldn't have told you what month it was. I
You're welcome.
attacked her in April. At that point, I had no idea if I was going to be physically capable to wrestle the next show, which was pretty dumb. But I wanted to hit her, so I did. And so, so that was kind of the timeline. And then, yeah, slowly but surely, I kind of got it back together, and now it's all good. But so that was a big hurdle, and that was the only injury I've ever sustained, really ever. So I was a bit of a shock. And I'm glad that I sorted it and got it sorted and stuff, and now it's all good. But yeah, in retrospect, it was a pretty weird time.
Before I go,
Was it kind of hard to deal with? Because, like, obviously, as we just talked about there with COVID, you're just kind of out of COVID. You're probably about a year and a half past COVID, and then bang, knee injury, and now all of a sudden, can't wrestle, can't train, all over again. Was it kind of like tough to deal with?
Yeah, so like I remember, so LJ put out this stat on Instagram of like the amount of matches he'd had in a year. And I've been working with a small company doing shows up and down the country, wrestling primarily in Trabolgan,
Mhm.
and they've done a few other shows in other places. And I remember looking at the number that LJ put up. I think he said he had about 200 matches in that year. And I remember looking at that number. I was like, I'm not far off. And that was a really cool, not an ego boost as much as it was a motivation. Like LJ's the fucking guy.
Mm.
And I was like, I'm not far behind. I really have been wrestling. There were a lot of weekends the lads are like, oh, you coming out? You coming out for a drink? I was like, I'm wrestling. I really was for a good year. I was almost full time. As much as you can be in this island. And yeah, and I think that's half the reason I kind of got burnt out in like November and stuff. I was like, okay, I kind of need a small break. And then, yeah, it's obviously really frustrating to kind of get over that slump to then get hurt straight away. And it was really, really annoying. And I think that's half the reason I was in denial about it for how as long as I was, because I was like, I can't be hurt. Like, how could I be hurt? Like, I jumped and I landed wrong. I can't be hurt. But like, but now I know if something like that ever happens again, I'm walking straight into whatever, hospital I need to just get it sorted straight away because I didn't handle it properly at all, and it was my own fault.
It's all a learned lesson, now, like, oh
Yeah.
shit, this doesn't feel right, hop on in. Because I was going to bring that up about the injury, because obviously we saw you in the first Hard Knocks, and then like it was like you kind of just like kind of disappeared for a bit, which we later found out was the injury. But as Carmo said, like obviously for yourself that must have been tough. What would have been like the most tough part about that whole injury? Was it more like just the anger of why not get this done sooner, or like what was kind of the biggest kind of toughest part of it?
The toughest part was I would feel pretty grand until it tweak again. And that's why it was kind of in denial. So I went to Australia and I was playing with my niece and my nephew, and we were in the swimming pool, and my leg, I'm starting to, I'm doing stuff over there to kind of help it. I know I'm hurt. I know that I was like, I'm not bringing my gear over to Australia and doing to try to get a bucket over there. I was like, I'm hurt. I'm taking it seriously. And then I'd start to feel pretty okay. And then, obviously they're small kids, so they grab you in whatever way, and you just feel this, it's like something bites you.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And every time I was like, oh my God. I was like, so it was like that. It was a strange injury. It was a very strange injury in the sense of like sometimes it felt completely fine. I mean, I was only on crutches for about 2 days. I could walk pretty fine. When I had a few drinks in me, I'd run around. It was great. But all of a sudden, like for whatever reason, I'd be walking around and all of a sudden I was like, I have to sit down. I can't, and that was why, and I think that's why I was in denial about for so long. I was like, I can walk around fine. Why does it tweak? And then, so I had to come to terms with the fact that I was really injured. And then when they told me, they're like, oh, you have a partially torn ACL and a partially torn meniscus. Thankfully, only partially. I was like, I knocked out 2 of them. And they were like, yeah. And I was like,
Shit.
so that was pretty wild.
Yeah, I tore both of those, so I know how bad it is. It's a wild thing to go through.
And mine were
Martin,
mine were already partially torn, which was lucky. I can't imagine if it was fully torn, I probably would have been out for a year, So
yeah. Martin, I just want to ask you, how are we doing for time?
Oh, perfect. Like we're 55.
I want to actually go backwards a small bit,
Yeah,
just because we missed over 2 things that I just want to talk about. One of them was you did earn a number 1 contender for the Phoenix World Championship by beating Mr. Charlie. And you kind of mentioned it there a few minutes ago about the match in Limerick. Justy, LJ Cleary, Steve Savage, and yourself in the main event, obviously for the Phoenix World Championship. Tell us about that match.
yeah, so I actually I beat Mr. Charlie, but then I also beat Raven Creed and Matt Schuyler. I beat Raven Creed 3 times. And obviously COVID happens again, and it's like a shot to the stomach. You're like, you get so amped up about this thing, and then it's gone again. And so the plans for me winning that match kind of fall through because it was so long. So it was kind of a reset for Phoenix. So that match, I don't know if anyone remembers this, but it was LJ, Justy, Steve, and originally it was Darren Carney. And Darren Carney drops out. And then it was a case of, well, he was like, well, I could do it. And he was like, yeah, he could do it. And then it was a small bit of like petitioning to do it. And if they thought I was ready for it. Because even that match was originally supposed to be me, Owen Richards, and Terry Thatcher. I mean, that's how much everything changed in that year because of COVID. It was just crazy. So eventually that match happens in Limerick, and everyone knows who Steve is, everyone knows who Justy is, everyone knows who LJ is. And we did that promo segment on that show where I had to interrupt LJ. And I just started running around the ring, started running through the crowd. Best babyface there ever was, honestly, if I can say so myself. Like I really was amped as hell. I had the glittery shawl thing. And yeah, we did the match, and I remember I just fucking went for it. Every single thing that I wanted to do or wanted to be a part, I was gonna try every single move. And that match was where, I was no longer like a guy they had to give a spot on the card to. I was someone that could be relied upon and also to watch. And that's all down to the 3 guys in the ring. Well, 4 guys. Foxy was there too. So those 4 guys. And for the opportunity that I was awarded. So that match was very, very important. And again, like I said earlier, based on that one match, I got the match in Cork with Justy, which was still a career highlight in many, many ways. And was like, I was fucking crying at the end because I'm fucking weird. And it was just such a fucking huge deal. All my friends were there who've never watched wrestling in their lives, were there to watch me, not the Limerick, but in Cork, that is. So like that Limerick match got me there, So yeah, it was a tremendous experience.
I hate using the word because we've talked about it quite a bit, but especially coming off for COVID, having those 2 big matches and main eventing those 2 shows, did that kind of show to yourself then as well that like, yeah, I can do this. I can definitely do this.
Yeah, and it also meant that like what I was putting into it wasn't for nothing, because wrestling is really, really hard. And there's a lot of guys, and I've been a victim of it too, where you work really hard and you don't get the spot. And you don't get the spot because you shouldn't. And it's not a fucking knock on you, or it's not a, whatever. It's just you shouldn't for your own good. And I remember after working as hard as I did, I was training 5 times a week for months. And then finally I was back training and wrestling to get 2 main events back to back. Like that was a huge thing. And then again, and like I said before, I started training at Fight Factory, and then that show in December with Justy, I wrestled my first Fight Factory show that December as well. I think it was the 18th or something like that. So that was another huge deal. So yeah, it was all upward momentum after that. It was pretty crazy.
100%. I do want to ask you briefly as well about the closing of Phoenix. So obviously it was announced that Phoenix had closing the doors, and nobody kind of knew what was kind of happening or anything like that. And obviously there wasn't kind of any, I suppose, wrestling between Cork, even in Limerick at that stage. There was no kind of company running through Cork and Limerick. How was that for you? Did you kind of know? Did you have a feeling that Billy had something up his sleeve, or did you just think, okay, what do I do now?
What I was thinking was I have to get up to Fight Factory. Because I didn't know. Obviously people were talking and there were rumblings, but I was kind of taking everything I heard with a pinch of salt because things change very quickly. So for a while I was like, yeah, I mean, Fight Factory's still there. I'm delighted that Rebel County Wrestling started again because, and I understand why it did. It was a clean slate, There's a lot of things in Phoenix that, people weren't happy with. And I don't mean like in a negative way, but there are things that people, we wanted to improve on.
Yeah.
And we felt, and Bedlam felt that, the best way to do it is to completely rebrand it as its own thing. With because even Phoenix in itself came with baggage. The whole idea of the name was it was CCW rising from the ashes. That was the whole idea of it. Even I think in retrospect, I think they regretted calling it that just because it came with that baggage. So then I think Rebel County Wrestling, I don't know when this is going up, but there's a show in Fermoy happening, and we're going to be doing more shows all over the country in partnership with Fight Factory and stuff, and I'm really looking forward to all those. So I think it's been in the end, it was a good thing for everyone. Really.
Is that your 2 questions?
I think the show is actually going on Saturday, the day of the Fermoy show, but I do believe there was one coming up in December in Ballyfermot in Dublin. I could be wrong on that.
Possibly.
Shows coming up all over the country.
Yeah.
All over the country.
Now,
sorry, go on, Martin.
So I just before, because I'm gonna go into kind of like what Riordan O'Connor is doing now, and just want after this question here, I have to ask, where does the Silky Smooth thing come from?
Where did that come from?
Yeah, like how where did that come from? Like, who is Silky Smooth Riordan O'Connor?
Well, I have a beard now, which kind of is funny because the whole idea is that I didn't. But I started doing promos in the bath and making jokes about L'Oreal and all that shit. And I remember on one of the shelves in my house, there was just a thing that says for Silky Smooth results. And I remember it kind of was like Silky Smooth. I was like, huh. And I remember I just said it once in training. We were fucking around. I just said, "Oh, Silky Smooth," and then it just stuck. And that's kind of evolved. Before it was Silky Smooth because I was completely hairless and straight out of the shower. Now I'm smooth as fuck. So that's kind of changed, but it still is like, yeah, I think it's a way of life. It's a way of life, guys.
Should have brought him in with like a Dove bottle. Just hold it up. Carmo, before I go heading into Hard Knocks and stuff like that, is there any other questions you want to ask?
That's actually exactly what I was going to head into, Hard Knocks, so I'll let you take that on.
No, you take Hard Knocks. Go ahead.
I'm just going to bring up the most recent Hard Knock show that we just had passed. Unfortunately, you didn't necessarily have a great time. Started off with a certain Robbie Mack coming out and cutting a promo. And then I think the man that nobody really wants to face in Limerick, Mr. Steve Savage.
Well, I was having a great day. I was injured that day. And there was like things, and I was like, oh, do I really want to? And I was like, you know what? No, I'm gonna go out in Limerick and I'm gonna tell everyone exactly what I think. And then Robbie Mack came out with his bald head, and then Steve came out with his bathroom wall looking ass, and then he came out, and I mean, if I had time to prepare, it would have been a different story. But yeah, I mean, Limerick loves me. They do. I mean, I know that they, but they do. I saw the way those guys were looking at me, and the girls, but the guys especially, particularly in Limerick, they love it. And I think Limerick is in need of someone like Riordan O'Connor.
So would we be expecting to see more of Riordan O'Connor and Hard Knocks going forward?
I certainly intend to. I think that with what I'm doing now in Cork and in Limerick, I have that sweet spot again. I had that sweet spot in 2022, and and then obviously things happened and fucking got hurt. But now I feel like I'm in that sweet spot again. I have a lot on my plate. I have a lot more on my plate than I did back then, because I have my own personal things to take care of. But I certainly intend on being at all those shows and being a part of the Irish wrestling scene, whether they want me to or not. So, yeah.
So Robbie Mack should watch out, really.
Oh, he especially. I mean, jeez. Seen him? You seen him?
Trust me, him and his fucking whales, anyways. But look,
Save the Wells. Save the Wells.
we have to talk about, and I like I've made a promo and everything for this because I stick by it, and I'll stick by it to the end of the year. It is the rivalry of the year in Irish wrestling. It is just you spoke about earlier on returning back in April to attack Raven Creed, which led us to the first match between you two. What a fucking thing that was done. Obviously, I know Raven Creed is kind of like a touchy thing for you, but like, just how is that for you? 3 matches against Raven Creed.
It was great. We went back to the main event thing in Limerick, and and sometimes you're the focus of a show, and sometimes you're the secondary character. And being the secondary character is great. It's really, really fun. But sometimes it's nice just having all the lights on you at once, because it's like a sink or swim. And I didn't go into that first match at 100%. I knew what I was capable and not capable of doing, and I did it anyways. And it went down without a hitch. And there was a lot of things that could have gone wrong, because like obviously, like an injured knee is no joke. Especially when you're in an ankle lock and you can feel every single part of your knee move. It was but it went down pretty well. And yeah, it was nice. And it was funny that a lot of people thought like that was really great. That was a really great match. That's cool. I'm glad, that was a nice thing. I can't wait to see what they do next. Expecting, but I knew the second that it happened, I was like, I want to face Raven Creed again. So
that's fair, because I mean, like, you look back at Hooks and the Feeling, like, it was like all 3 were brutal, but this one kind of set the tone, if you'd say. There was Kendo Six involved, I believe, according to Luke on commentary. An old friend of yours getting involved when she lifted him up into a drop kick, which obviously became a common thing with Raven getting fans constantly involved and hitting you. but like it really set things off. Obviously, you picked up the win at Hooked on the Feeling, as you would say, your second win against Raven Creed.
Mhm.
So and then obviously, like Carmo, this was the first time you then got to experience it. Was Let's Go to Work was the Raven Creed Riordan O'Connor no DQ match. I'll let you talk about this one a bit, Carmo.
100%. So like even at the first one, I unfortunately wasn't at the first match, but I did watch it back when it went up on YouTube, and I had that anticipation for the second match, but I didn't know where you could kind of take it. But just to see how much of a level up that you brought that second match to was just incredible. Like, how was the match for yourself?
Yeah, that match was it was definitely a highlight. All of them were, but that match as well, because again, we did we had a match and we killed each other, and everyone was like, that was great. And I kind of got the sense that people didn't think it was going to be topped. Um, and then we did. And I think we knocked it out of the park, and I'm very, very happy with it all. But I think that that first match, like I said, I was still like a bit hurt, and wasn't 100%. But that second match, I was like, I'm ready for whatever is thrown, whatever. And so we just went for it. We just went for it. And I was very, very proud of it. Um, and that table hurt a lot, but it's you kind of get into that when you face Raven Creed. You take the chance to do shit like that. So that was a cool experience. And that first show was the first show where I had I don't know if you've noticed this. This is a theme. The first match I had new boots. They were white, but I still had the black kick pads and the purple tights. Second match I had the white boots and I had white kick pads and the purple pants. And the final match I had white boots, white kick pads, and finally I had new blue and white tights. So that's a personal theme. Personal.
I was actually gonna bring that up with the third match, because obviously you spoke about Jericho being your favorites. That the last attire was very Jericho-esque from the match with Sean.
Yes, yeah, and like that is like, obviously Jericho is my favorite wrestler. I think he's just the best, and that era of Jericho, like, you could give him anything. You could just give him anything to do on a show, and it'll always be something that you should see. And I mean, that's how I've always treated my matches. I've always treated my matches as if it doesn't matter where I'm first, second, third, last, before the show, after the show, whatever I'm doing should be the main thing. I mean, I think RVD says something like that as well. Like, it doesn't matter where you are on the show, fucking steal the show. And I've always had that mindset. And so I felt like the new tights were long overdue. And that was cool. And I remember when I put them on, and I kind of got a look from everyone kind of looking around. They were like, goddamn, look good, kid. So I got a bit of that. So
they were very jealous, obviously.
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak on their behalf. That's a bit cruel of you. But they were, but I won't say that out loud. But they were, but I won't say that they were.
But with that gear, obviously, came the rubber match, the final match, the first show of the PAV. Which, by the way, for you, how like the view of the PAV? What did you actually think of the PAV yourself?
It was weird having a crowd above me.
Yeah,
that was the first thing that kind of stood out, because the keynote, the Fight Factory gym, the Hard Knock shows, there's a balcony in the Hard Knocks, but a lot of the crowd is beneath you and you kind of look down. It was very strange kind of looking out, and most people not even are on eye level. Like, the seated fans are on eye level, but then everyone else is actually above you. But it was a cool experience. It was a very cool experience. The PAV's a really nice venue. I've gotten drunk and fucked up many, many times in there before there was ever a ring in there. And it's a nice venue. It's a really, really cool venue. And I think it was kind of fitting that Raven Creed and Riordan O'Connor 3 happened in such a bombastic, spectacle-looking place. I mean, it sells the show. So yeah, but nothing but love for the PAV.
And if like with this match we're about to talk about, and all the matches that you can check them on the RCW's YouTube, but like this third match was brutal. I mean, you had the addition of ladders in it. Again, bring the candlesticks out, chairs. You know, you two ripped each other apart. And I just gotta ask as well. Like, you took a really, really rough ladder spot with a helicopter ladder. Like, are you okay after that?
Yeah, my shoulder was in bits for days, because it hit me all there. Really, really sucked. Really sucked. So I don't forgive her for that. But she was stupid and she threw it over her head and it landed on the back of her shoulder blade. So you know what? I actually, don't really care.
You take your wins when you get them. And speaking of wins here, obviously you came out on top. Riordan O'Connor was the last wrestler standing, but there was the addition of one big nasty cunt, Chris Connolly. What's kind of going on there?
Well, Chris is someone I've had my eye on for a long time. I think he is supremely talented. He's a big boy. He's comes from a rugby background like myself, so we get on like a house on fire. He doesn't say much, but yeah, Chris is someone who I have thought of very highly for a long time, and it just made perfect sense that someone who is in need of a bit more silky smooth and someone like me who could use a big old teddy bear beside me, you just put them together.
But obviously, in that match, would it really have been a win? I mean, like, Raven had you down, and then big Chris Connolly came out and slammed her on that chair.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, like, it seemed like Raven was about to win. That was Raven's big move. She was gonna kill Riordan O'Connor, and then big Chris Connolly came out and hit that power bomb, and that's what gave the 10 count for the last wrestler standing.
Well, Raven Creed tried to choke me out, and I still stood up at 9. And she didn't after she fell off the ropes. So I don't really see what you're trying to say. I don't really understand the question.
Well, I'm trying to say is, would Riordan O'Connor really have won that match if Chris Connolly wasn't there?
Are you kidding?
Well, no. Like, she had you beat. Like, it was over. And then big Chris came out, picked
She
her
had me
up.
beat.
It looked like you were out for
You want to be very careful what you say here. You want to be very careful.
It's probably an L for Red or for Riordan on that show, only for Chris Connolly. That's
What?
like
An L.
I mean,
an L. This fucking show is an L. These two fucking jabronis fucking interviewing me as a fucking. Are you crazy? She set me up for something stupid, all right? You have no idea what I was planning. Chris was a great guy, a great friend. He looked out for me. Are you absolutely out of your mind? I had Raven Creed beat on every single time. I had her on every single moment in that match. Fuck this.
What did
He just left the fuck call.
he? He's gone.
I mean, like, were we mean? I thought we were just, like, telling it how it was.
We were just speaking true.
He was out for the right. You were there as well. Like, he was clearly
Yeah,
like he was
That's
out.
why I said it. Without Chris Connolly, Riordan O'Connor would have taken an L.
Well, that's the first time we've ever had anyone leave a fucking like interview at all. I'm
kind of in shock here.
I'm definitely looking for that fucking money back we paid him to have him on here.
My heart's kind of beating here small, but I'm in shock after that. I don't know what just happened.
Well, I guess thank you, Riordan O'Connor, for coming on.
Yeah, look, the conversation was great before that.
It was fine. It was perfect.
Fantastic.
It was really reasonable. He was listening to everything. But it's not our fault if that's the facts of the facts. Like, realistically, facts of the facts. Without Chris Connolly,
100%.
he would not have won that.
Look, I think we should finish this here. We talk about it separately. We'll maybe reach out to Riordan in the next couple of days and we'll see what the story is. But look, ladies and gentlemen, you know where to find us on our socials. If not, they're down below somewhere in the video. We have been the 5Marks Pro Wrestling Podcast, but for today, unfortunately a little early, we are ding, done.
Apologies, everyone.